Good afternoon. Can someone just put a quick message in to say they can hear us firstly, please? There's usually a bit of a delay, but if someone could put a quick comment there before we start. Always a bit of an awkward silence.
Yeah.
Don't all rush at once. And then what will happen is we'll have like 24. Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. There we go.
Darren, Steve, Grace, appreciate it. Right. First of all, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. This is the second one of these that So Sales have done. We did one during the first national lockdown, which was, I think, quite strategic, and I'll come back to in a sec. But today is off the back of that, really, and off the back of a few people messaging me and saying, you know, they'd like to see something specifically on new business. So I've invited along the best person I could think of with regards to new business, Mr. Trevor Pinder.
Good afternoon, all. Nice to see you all kind of in little icons, albeit virtually, but I'll see you all anyway. So, yeah, absolutely right.
So Trev, as I've alluded to through some of my promotional content, is quite simply the best trainer I've ever come across or worked with. He predominantly, fair to say, Trev, operates within the recruitment space at present.
Absolutely. Yeah, that'd be fair to say.
But a lot of his content, I know, is absolutely relevant to the wider sales world, so the digital sales world and so on. So delighted that Trev can join us today, and we'll be getting into the weeds in just a second. Before we do, a couple of little announcements. I think the majority of you that are on here are probably on here to see if you've won a free bottle of champagne, which is absolutely fine, by the way. We all need alcohol to get us through lockdown, and we will be announcing that at the end, and there will be a second bottle of champagne that you can win. So I'll come back to that at the end.
I hadn't told you shit, but I'm going to chuck in a prize as well.
Excellent. Okay.
I'm going to chuck in a free coaching call.
A free coaching call. Perfect.
A free 30-minute coaching call for whoever wins.
Should we say the best question that you receive is the winner of that?
Best question I received today will win a free coaching call, and all I have to do is contact me afterwards and we'll set it up. So absolutely right, yeah.
Superb. Thanks for that, Trevor. So that comes on nicely too. We will be covering off some questions at the end. So please, as we're going through, if you've got a question, pop it in the comments, and we'll try our very best at the end to try and rattle through those.
Absolutely.
There's also a poll at the bottom, which will shape some of the stuff we're going to be talking about. So there are a few votes there already. What's your biggest challenge when prospecting? Today is all about prospecting. So please do vote there, and that will guide us into a couple of the specific things we can talk about. In terms of why we're doing this, well, look, I mean, we did the first one, really successful. We had some great feedback. We had lots of people watch it, but that was very much about, I think, strategic sales, about, you know, selling at quite a high level. And I'm delighted to hear that the three guys that joined me as the experts have both absolutely smashed it this year. So it was good that we got them on. But some of the feedback was, well, that was great. There were some takeaways, but we're really keen to look at how we can improve our new business process. So that's what we're going to focus on today. So, Trev, I'll pass across to you now.
Good.
Why does a lowly recruiter like yourself think that you can positively impact people in the wider sales arena?
I've got a few reasons, Sam, actually. Now, believe it or not, the way that I've been training recruitment over the last 3 years now, I'd suggest, is that recruitment is no longer about people. It's about selling solution and product. So the smart recruiter has already moved away from selling human capital, from selling bodies. They're now selling answers to complex challenges. They're now selling solutions, now selling products. Secondly, I'm respectful of every single sales area that people are in, right? So I wouldn't be, you're not going to hear me utter, well, sales is sales is sales, because that's bollocks. It's not, right? There are nuances. There are certain flavors. There are certain things that we need to do regarding what we are and what we do as salespeople. There are some key fundamentals, though. Some key fundamentals that will make a great salesperson, a SaaS salesperson, a solution salesperson, a person that sells skips, right? It doesn't matter, okay? Thirdly, and interestingly, I've got a software sales business myself to a certain extent. I've got an online training platform, which is a subscription-based business. So I've been on that journey and learned how to sell that. So I wouldn't go as far to say I'm the best placed person in the world, but let's put it like this, I'm in the top one.
Yes, Cluffy. Love a Brian Clough quote. Great. And a lovely plug for J9 Online as well.
Yeah, you've got to get in early. If you're not on it, why not?
You got yeah. No, great stuff. No, thank you for that. And I'd agree with that. I mean, I've delivered sales training, as part of my career, and also, seen lots of sales trainings and stuff. But I've been on a number of sessions with you, both group sessions and one-to-one, and always taken lots away personally. So, no, good stuff. Well, look, let's start with, a lot of people, and we are going to focus on the start of the sales process, Trev. So we are looking at those people that are looking to engage people, that are looking to book demos, that are looking to book more meetings, that are looking to have more conversations with decision makers. Mm-hmm. And a lot of those people might find themselves in a bit of a different situation at the moment because they're working from home. They've not got the buzz of the sales floor. They're not sat next to, their mate that they're listening to and picking stuff up, and they're bouncing around ideas. So, I mean, firstly, just from your perspective, you've obviously been talking to recruiters. Could you maybe share some of the common challenges that you think people are having that are in an outbound role that are currently sat in the living room in the pants?
Yeah, mate, of course, mate. And by the way, I spend a lot of time in my living room and in my pants. I'm not necessarily working. You know what I mean? But by the same token, it's really key for me to mention, and probably my biggest USP as a coach is that I'm not just a coach, because I only spend half of my working life as a coach. The other half of my working life, I'm fully back on the tools. So the key to whatever I talk about with all of you today is that I'm using it. There's no one that can pull the wool over my eyes and say that used to work, Trev, but no more. I can't do that, Sam. I'm a live dog in the market, and I'm a live dog in the market that's just doing deals, right? The key to working from home, and there's a few of these, and let's just get rid of the logistical stuff first. Don't lay on your bed. Don't sit on your sofa. If you've got the opportunity, change location. Never work where you rest, right? Never work where you rest, because that's just crackers, right? The second thing is that you must look after yourself in terms of communication channels. So we must have open communication channels to allow us to celebrate small successes, to allow us to celebrate getting through to a prospect, right? To allow us to celebrate having a decent biz dev call, to allow us to celebrate getting a decent response. And by the way, just so we're clear here, push your outputs to one side, right? The key to success in any business development engagement is coming off that business development engagement, not necessarily with a meeting booked or a demo booked or anything else. The key to a successful business development engagement is finding out more about that prospect than you started with at the start of the engagement. That's the key. So release yourself from the outputs, right? The second part to working from home outside of communication channels is chop your day up, Sam. You must chop your day up, right? Salespeople are notorious. We are horrific for long-term focus. The technical term is we are fucking butterflies, right? We flip into one little flower, take a little bit of nectar, and then fuck off to the next one. Expect we're gonna. So we are unable to sustain our efforts for a long period of time because it's just not in us. We won't be salespeople. I'm a massive fan of 2-hour sprints. I'm a massive fan of 2-hour sprints, allowing us 2 hours allows us to achieve something notable, but it's short enough to ensure that we stay focused.
So just on sprints, and I know they're a big concept that you talk about. Let's just go high level for those people that haven't kind of come across this before. If you were talking to an SDR whose job it is, as we said, to book demos or meetings, what would you say are the non-negotiables, the bullet points of a good sprint?
Well, first things first, your daily non-negotiables are not booking meetings and demos, right? Listen, right? We're in a world now more than we've ever been where we've got to control the controllables. Right, I've banned the C word, not the C bomb, because I love the C bomb, Sam. But I've banned
that one here. I know I said parent explicit, but let's leave.
Anyway, there'll be no. There may be a little bit of effort. Well, there's already been a bit of effort in Jeffy. If you are offended by a little bit of swearing, you're on the wrong fucking webinar. But there'll be no C bomb. There'll be no C bomb. But I've banned the C word. Right? We cannot listen. None of you sales guys, right, can control this fucking pandemic or COVID or Brexit or anything like that. We can't control what Bozo's going to do next, right? Make himself isolate for the next 10 years if we can. But we can't control any of that. All we can control is the controllables. You can't control how many demos you book. You can't control how many meetings you book. What you can control is your inputs. You can control how many prospects you have on a list of calls today. You can control how many dials you make. You can control how many digital touch points you hit. You can control how many prospects you reach out to digitally, how many prospects you call. You must control the controllables. You must set yourself free from outputs on a daily basis. Of course, you should be challenging yourself on outputs on a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis, depending on your sales cycles. Do you know what I mean? Depending on what it takes to do what we got to do. But on a daily basis, control your inputs, control your controllables.
So going back to sprints then, so what is a sprint? What does someone need to be focusing on? What does someone need to do to make sure those 2-hour blocks are efficient?
Dials and get-throughs. Dials and get-throughs, right? Dials and get-through. So for me, if I look at my world at the moment, I set my day into 3 sprints, right? One of those is a digital sprint. So one of those will be full of digital engagement. I've seen some guys from Force 24 on who are experts in digital engagement. So one of my sprints will be in and around Force 24, in and around LinkedIn, or both. But 2 of my sprints will be telephone-based sprints. And they may be separate client universes that I'm speaking to, right? They may be a client universe that exists in one area, in one niche, in one geography, in one industry, or a second client universe. So what I'm effectively doing is I'm focusing on an individual client universe for a 2-hour sprint. And what I would have done is I would have prepared a data set the evening before to ensure that sprint is filled with me being as productive as possible. So a 2-hour sprint is where you're focused around a series of inputs. Now, you've got your eye on the outputs, but you must achieve your inputs. If you don't achieve your inputs, you're cheating yourself. And your inputs are only what you can control. Dials to the large extent, so actions, get-throughs to slightly lesser.
I think that's so important. And, I mean, it's like anything. I mean, Trev, the greatest respect, there'll be a couple of things today that might be slightly new to people. But you're not reinventing the wheel, are you? You know, that's not what coaching or training is about. Often you're just reinforcing the stuff that we've all once done that we've forgotten about. And
my job is not to reinvent the wheel, mate. My job is to make the fucking thing go faster.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think with sprints, and we've all been guilty of this, you know, I certainly have. I work best when I do exactly as you've said. I set aside 4 sprints in a day, 2-hour sprints, and I get done. Because if not, you know, the stuff that should take me 20 minutes, half an hour, it takes you a whole morning, doesn't it? It spreads in hot water. I think they're important. We'll come back to that in a sec, because I think today, you know, when I'm looking at sales and improving ourselves, I think there are the 3 key parts to it: process, kind of knowledge on the product, and then skills around the sales part of it. So we will come back to process in a bit. We're talking about working from home, and I just want to wrap this up. First thing then, so you've spoken about the importance of communication channels. You've talked about the importance of sprints. How can managers remotely best support this? Because there's probably going to be a couple of managers on this call.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So managers must work hard to create a positive environment, right? So there are so many managers out there. And by the way, I engage. I do something called a manager's toolkit, right? Where effectively I'm consistently engaging managers, and all of the stuff that I train and coach is practical nuts and bolts. I don't do helicopter, right? I don't do holistic. I do the stuff that's going to make a fucking difference to your revenue pipeline. That's what I do, right? The key with managers is they'll think that they haven't got as many opportunities to coach right now. That's bollocks. They've got more opportunities to coach right now, right? So if we've got the opportunity to listen into calls, if we've got the opportunity to listen into demos, if we've got the opportunity to buddy up to demos, we should. But also, we should be mystery shopping, Sam. As leaders, we should be mystery shopping. We should be dotting in and out. If, let's say, you were reporting into me and I was looking for you to sell some meetings today, I might phone you 11:15 tomorrow morning. You don't know I'm coming. Say, Sam, do us a favour. Give us your meeting pitch. Come on, son, let's go.
Yeah.
So mystery shop, dot in and out. Your guys can never know when you're coming. So you come in and out, you dot in and out. But you must also be prepared. You listen, you leaders, you lead from the front now. You puff out your fucking chest and you get it done yourselves as well. The other thing is let's make sure that we're creating an incentive for when this is over. We're creating a world back to normal incentive. And let's make sure we're making those incentives creative. And they don't have to be loads and loads of dough. They don't have to be thousands or tens of thousands of pounds. Let's make sure we're creating something that says, when we get out of this together, we're going to do this or that. Right? And those communication channels are led by your leaders. And we are wholeheartedly celebrating our small wins. Right? And if we are running morning setups, let's make sure those morning setups have got teeth. Just make sure there's some accountability hanging on those for the end of the day, or you're wasting people's time. The morning setup becomes such a waste of time if people are not accountable off the back end of it. So clear direction, clear instruction, lead from the front, celebrate small wins, coach, and turn up a mystery shop. All of those things, mate, are so vital, right? And make sure you're allowing people at the end of their sprints to have some time to walk the dog, to have some time to, get away. At the end of your sprint, get away. Give yourself some time away and back in, because otherwise we're claustrophobic, Sam. It's not the way forward, No,
I agree. Thanks for that, Trev. Final point then around working from home, and I think that this is a really important one, because we've spoken about the individual, we've spoken about the manager and how they should be, creating this environment of excellence, if you like. You're new in the job, or even if you're not new in the job, you sat next to your guy, you're doing a sprint session, you sat next to one of your colleagues, and you pick something out that they say. It might be a case study you've not heard before. It might be a great question that they ask, or it might be a way in which they engage in the first 20 seconds of the call. And that learning through osmosis, as I call it, which we all do, we nick the best off the guys and girls around us, don't we? That's what I'm doing at the moment. So if I can't learn off the person that sat next to me, and I'm relatively new in the role, and I'm maybe looking to develop my knowledge, I know what you're going to say, I'm teeing it up, but how can I, as a salesperson, still learn, despite the fact I haven't got my colleagues I can learn from?
Sam, do you play golf?
Quite badly, yeah.
Yeah, me too, right? And you probably pay money to practice your golf, yeah? Yeah. Okay, so you pay money to practice at golf, then you play golf and it costs you money. Yeah, if we practice at a job, it earns us money. Yet we don't practice. Our fucking crackers. Listen to what I've just said, right? So we've got a bunch of salespeople on here, right, that want to get better at pitching, that want to get better in the first 30 seconds of a conversation, that want to get better at what they do. Because when they get better at what they do, there's an embarrassment of riches. Suddenly they're not going to Holiday South, and they're going to St. Lucia, right? The world changes when you're successful. That's the reason we come into sales, because we can become the mistress or the master of our destiny. Yeah, we don't practice. So I'm getting myself some buddies. I'm getting myself some honchos. I'm getting myself some people that once a day, once a week, once every other day, I can go, right, do us a favour. I'm just about to take a pitch on the road. I'm just about to take a pitch on the road and role play it. Can I go through it with you? Practice. Listen, right, when I came into sales, right, it was the fucking Wild West, man. Right? We could get, listen, we was 130, 140 dials. We could get 40 people on the phone. We could tell them we were specialists. We could tell them we were great, and they'd do some business with us, right? But how about this?
That itself, did it?
The opportunities are not there to get as many people on the phone now. There are gatekeepers. There are deal prevention police. There are armed guards. There are people stopping us. So we must practice away from the job.
Okay. Sorry, Trev. Sorry to interrupt. The other thing that I just wanted to touch on there is, so I'm brand new and I've maybe not got that bigger knowledge of my space, and I know one of the things in your kind of 4-point plan that you talk about is absolute knowledge of your environment, your space, your industry, and your product.
Yeah.
And if you could maybe just touch on how we can use our prospects as a great resource to building our own knowledge, really, of what we're selling, what we're doing.
Yeah, so I'm a massive fan of insight selling, Sam. Right. Well, there's two things about knowing your product, right? The first thing is, as leaders, we've got a definite opportunity, and everyone's got a little bit of Zoom fatigue, right? I fucking know I have, but everyone's got a little bit of Zoom fatigue. But we should be having product quizzes, right? We should be having product quizzes. We should be having example quizzes where we're having a laugh for that, right? But for me, insight comes in so many shapes and sizes, right? So I look to collect insight from every single conversation I have. And then what great salespeople do is they collect insight from one source and they regurgitate it to the next one. And what that allows you to do is portray being an expert very, very quickly, right? I've just seen some people on here. I've seen Pulse 24. I've seen Ultra. I've seen some different people on here. I don't know your product anywhere near as well you do, but I can portray myself as an expert by taking insight from each prospect I spoke to and very, very quickly, continuously regurgitating that insight. And the way that you regurgitate insight, right, is really interesting, because when you collect insight, you deliver insight and then ask an open question off the back of it, right? So by collecting. So I might be trying to sell. I might be trying to sell. I don't know. I might be trying to sell some video technology, right? Some video technology that will make a difference to disparate sources, right? That are working across the US that can't get together. And I might say, I might go to a prospect and say, listen, Mr. or Mrs. Prospect, I've just spoken to 15 regional managers that are scattered around the US. And each and every one of those are suggesting that they are finding a challenge in terms of being able to get together and share insight via video technology. So what that's meant is that's cost them huge amounts of time in terms of sending spurious emails, in terms of not being able to get their solutions together. What do you see? I've just taken the insight off the call before. I haven't got a fucking clue what they're talking about. But I'll regurgitate that insight and ask an open question off the back of it. So it's called insight questioning, right? So what you do, you take the insight, you regurgitate it, you make it big, bold and bright, and pop an open question off the back. What you're doing is by giving your prospect insight, and by the way, my first new business question when I speak to a prospect is always insight based, 100% of the time. I'll collect some juicy insight, deliver that insight, which makes me a specialist, a live dog, tells the person I know I'm talking to in the market. I'll drop an open question off the back of it, thus making them an expert. It works like a dream. To be compelling early on, for that first question, it's a beauty.
Excellent. Yeah, and I mean, our good friend Gary Goldsmith always says he can be an expert in any market after 2 phone calls with his
absolutely can
methodology. So maybe just run over that for the.
Listen. Look, right. Listen, we talk about PPP a lot. We talk about PPP all the time. Now, Gary, my younger brother, he built a 500-person business, and he believes that one of these biggest methodologies was PPP, and it was people, products, and places. Right? Who are the best people you've ever worked with? Where are the places you'd most like to deploy your solution? Where are the places you'd most like to speak to? Where are the places that are doing stuff that other people aren't doing in your world? Where are the places that are doing something that's changing the game? Right? And talk to me about future. What's the next product? What's the next big thing? What's coming around the corner? And we have a collection of insight based on the 3 Ps. Once we collect those 3 Ps from our first call, we regurgitate those on our second call and ask questions off the back of those 3 Ps. So very, very quickly, you're just becoming an expert. Very, very quickly, you are just becoming smart, regardless of whether you're smart or not, right? I've been winging it for 25 years, Sam. I only turned up to clean the windows. Right? I've been winging it for all this time. But I regurgitate. I regurgitate and I make better. And great salespeople have the opportunity to assimilate information and then use it, because we're in the information business, Sam.
Yeah, agreed. It's interesting. I mean, I've done a lot of coaching and training with salespeople, and I think the irony is the less somebody knows, or the less confident somebody is about either their product solution or what they're doing or their industry, the more they try and talk, and the more they try and convince themselves and the prospect that they know what they're talking about. Whereas actually to just sit back and, as you've said, ask open questions, you're gonna get more out of that. But I love, and we will come back to this idea of insight questioning, because we'll come back to it when we focus on skills.
Yeah, the Valhalla of sales communication, by the way, there's a phrase that makes me want to smash people's face in every time I hear it, right? People say he or she should be in sales. They've got the gift of the gab. I'd like to set those people on fire. and the reason for that is great salespeople understand the 20/80. The Valhalla for sales communication is dictated by you only ever speaking 20% of the time. If you're speaking more than 20% of the time, the conversation is about you rather than the person you're speaking to. What underpins that is your ability to ask fantastic questions.
And I think also to get that balance, Trev, you need to have a bit of credibility with the person that you're talking to. And I'm sure we've all been there. We're on a cold call. We're asking nice, big, open questions, and we're getting actually really short responses. And that's probably because we've not demonstrated our credibility. The beauty of what you're talking about there with insight, with putting that preamble right on the front bit of the call, you're an expert. And those conversations where I know I've done that, they're far juicier conversations. They trust you. They believe you can help their business,
Sam, I wander into so many organizations, and they can show me their company pitches, their demo pitches, their sales pitches. Can't show me the questions. And the questions that they show me, well, fuck me, I've got the 1970s on the phone. They want the salesperson back, right? The questions they show me are just diabolical, man. Right? It's just not worth a rub. So, by the way, most salespeople don't know how to pitch, but we'll come on to that. But more salespeople know how to pitch, know how to question. If you're not great in discovery, and I call when we're asking great questions discovery. If you're not great in discovery, you can't be great in pitch. Because all you're going to do, if you're not great in discovery, when it comes to pitch, you're just going to be verbally sick all over your prospect. Yeah. And you're going to hit them with features and go, do you want to buy it? And you're going to wonder why they say no.
Yeah.
So we don't focus enough on questions at all. We don't have great questions.
I'm sure we will come back to that in a second. So we've covered off the working from home piece. I think, I like what you're talking about in terms of sprints, in terms of focusing on inputs, not outputs, in terms of how management should drive that behavior, how we can still learn through osmosis. So practicing, buddying up. That doesn't have to be someone from the same business. It can be a friend that was in sales in a different, it can be anything. And we've looked at, how we can get knowledge from our prospects, how we can use that, and how we can tag it onto the start of our questions to ask some killer questions. Just a slight change of course now, because one of my big bugbears, and I spoke to you about this the other day, is every week I get 30 different email chains, and each one of them has got 3 or 4 automated steps that will all come, maybe one day, then 2 days, and 3 days after the other. Shout out to Force 24, by the way. And, I get 30 of these a week. I get 2 sales calls. So I'm going to add it to you. Somebody always puts it on LinkedIn to get a few likes and to get a bit of clamour. Is cold calling dead, Mr. Trevor Pinder?
It's the biggest load of bollocks you've said all day, Sam.
Hey, I'm not saying it is. I'm asking you. Go on.
Come on now. Come along now. What are we without it? Well, it's the most fun part. It's the most fun you can have with your clothes on. What are we without it, Sam? But listen, here's the key. Cold calling ain't dead. You just got to know how to do it. Right? Outside of doing a deal, what's the biggest buzz you can get? Yeah. Right? It's a great call where you spoke to someone. Listen, here it is. Right? No one don't phone no more. So I do. Right? I'm like the fireman in 9/11. Right? Everyone else is running out of the building. I'm running in. Right? Because I want an ism. I want a difference. I want to be the little fat, bald Jack Russell that hangs on people's ankle and won't go away till I get a bit of business. Right? I'm that person. Listen, cold calling is not dead. Cold calling is more alive than it's ever been. Now, if we can facilitate more cold calls by having some smart digital touch points, they're beautifully done. Because what we do, familiarity, digital touch points breeds familiarity. Familiarity breeds time when we speak to people. But listen, buck the trend. Get someone's number. People make me laugh. What happens when you make a cold call? Did you get the old Liam Neeson phone call? Shouldn't have made that cold call of taking your daughter. It doesn't happen, does it? What's the worst thing can happen? Why are we in a generation of people that conditioned ourselves that don't like the word no? You don't like the word no. Get a job where you say to people, "Would you like fries with that?" Because that's about the best job you're ever going to get, right? Mate, go the other way. Start doing it, but enjoy it. Listen, business development is a game that big billers play. Enjoy it, man. Enjoy it, man.
So, obviously, I've been facetious. I know it's not dead.
It's not like you, Sam. But I've never known you to be facetious before, Sam.
And I think we all agree, and I've done a bit of video content on this, that cadence is really important. Digital touch points are really important, whether that's via email, whether that's through LinkedIn. And I know that one of the things that you've done as an individual and as a trainer is really kind of shape yourself from, well, hang on a sec, this is here to stay. You might have been cynical at first, but we've got to engage with this. You've said you do your digital sprint. So how do you've already said that digital, and I think this is a really important part for salespeople, digital touch points are there to facilitate more conversations.
Yes.
This challenge that people have said so far on the poll is getting people on the phone. So how are you using digital touch points? What tools are you using to facilitate more conversations?
Absolutely right. So I am a big fan of cross-platform digital touch points. I'm a big fan of a big fast blast. Right. I come from a world where the digital marketeer or the marketeer and the salesperson were miles apart. but now we're like that.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know where I was skeptical at first, but it is here to stay. So I'm a big fan of persistently consistent digital touch points. Right. I'm a big fan of a sharp, fast blast. But understanding, you know, if you look at your guys at Force 24, they map out digital journeys for you. But I'm a big fan of cross-platform digital journeys. I'm a big fan of giving something back in terms of digital touch points. I'm a big fan of speaking to people and giving content back, speaking to people and suggesting, I'll sell to you if you want me to, but I'd rather get you insights as an expert. And I'm suggesting I like to flood people quite quickly, quite aggressively with digital touch points that mean something off a well-designed sequence and then crack them into a call cycle. So, for example, to give you an example, I like 6 digital touch points in a 5-day period.
So how do you facilitate that? So, I mean, automation is something that we've spoken about.
Yeah.
Something that we both use. I mean,
yeah.
The majority of people on here, you probably got bombarded from a couple of platforms from me. So apologies for that. It was really...
It's the only way forward, mate.
But yeah, how are you using, what are you doing? Let's be specific. So let's give away a few Pinder tricks of the trade here. What are you doing? What's your first mail? What are you saying? How are you doing it? What are you using to do that?
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of cross-platform first of all. So I like to mix my digital touch points, LinkedIn and email. I use an automation tool on LinkedIn called Duck Soup, which I really like. Which is, now we're very aware that LinkedIn spent $500 million last year trying to shut down Google plugins. LinkedIn, the most despicable company God ever invented. But anyway, that's no, they have got a captive audience in us. So I cross-platform LinkedIn and email. I'm very aware of email rules. I'm very aware that subject titles get emails open, so I'm very careful about my subject titles. I'm very careful about my bodies of my email, in terms of my emails are always less than 100 words where possible. I never introduce myself in an email because no one gives a fuck who I am and I don't know who I am, and I always finish with a call to action. And anything about a digital touch point, the first sentence must be compelling. Because when anyone opens an email or a LinkedIn message, I also use video, Sam. I'm a big fan of Odro. I was an early adopter in Odro. I love Odro to pieces. I'm a big fan of utilising LinkedIn emails as well, getting to the top of people's tree. And I'm a big fan of utilising email in the right time. And we have to understand our black spots. We have to understand when people are going to read content, look at content. And I also use an email automation tool, which allows me to understand when people have opened emails, how many times, and that type of thing. So I've embraced it, but you don't just embrace the tools, Sam. You have to embrace when you message, how often you message, and what platforms you use to message. So it's a big subject, and I don't pretend to be an expert, but I know what results I'm getting in my world, which is my sales world, which is New York. I'm just about to smash to pieces a big marketing campaign post Thanksgiving, which will lead some product based calls that I'll get people onto. Quick little digital touch point tip for you: make sure you do a mail shot on Christmas Day, because you'll get huge amounts of mobile numbers that come back off auto replies.
Yeah.
Mail shot your CRM on Christmas morning. Right, because you will get more mobile numbers and cell phone numbers you can shake a stick at.
Cool. Just so a couple of questions. So Neil's just asked, what was that video software you mentioned? Trevor mentioned a tool called Odro, which is a tool specifically, a video tool specifically for recruiters. They've got a really cool part of that. But I think there are a couple of other platforms that are coming out as well that you can subscribe to that will allow you to send video messages.
Yeah.
I know LinkedIn is doing the voice notes thing now that you can use in WhatsApp as well. And I spoke to a few people that are getting a bit of result from that.
Yeah.
And just so you mentioned Duck Soup, I use LinkedIn Helper too, which again allows.
There's one other player as well, Sam, it's called Octopus. And Octopus is nice because it tracks connection percentages as well.
Perfect.
So I mean, LinkedIn Helper was the king for me, the king or the queen for me previously. They just keep getting captured. So hopefully they're out LinkedIn's claws now.
Yeah, they've got a standalone app that I use now, which you need a computing degree to actually use. But once you get the hang of it, David.
There you have it, mate. Yeah.
Thank you, Dad. But the other thing as well, if people are, again, people struggling to get people on the phone. Trev's mentioned a little tool there. I used to use that all the time. Sending them a message. If you ring someone's on holiday, drop them an email. Chances are you get your out of office, get them over back. But you've also got Lusher and tools like that out there that can.
Yeah, so you got Lusher in the UK, you've got Zoom Info and Contact out in the US, which are nice. There's some free tools out there as well. But also make sure you double tap in as well.
Yeah.
If you've got someone's number, direct dial, if they don't pick up the first time, call it the second time. Make sure you double tap. Make sure we're double tapping. Make sure we're doing all of the simple, sensible, basic things that we should be doing with a view to engaging our prospects. Yeah. And by the way, right, there's no sex pan for here. Yeah. I haven't got something that works 60% of the time all the time. Right. It's graft.
Yeah.
It's graft. It's setting your success factors. My full understanding is, right, I've got to phone between 40 and 60 prospects to have 5 conversations, and I'm comfortable to settle in for the ride. Right. So listen, it's always been panning for gold, and it's no different.
Superb. Thanks, Trev. Just looking at what's on my list here. So we took some digital touch points. If we're looking at process, then, so we've talked around process quite a lot. We've talked about calling, we've talked about sprints, we've talked about our digital touch points. If we're to summarize as the 3 things that salespeople should be doing to improve their process, what would you say?
Interestingly, Sam, one of the biggest things I want to do a little bit of psychology now. You never believe that, would you? A builder's son from Sidcup. So you must plan your day the night before because of your subconscious, and don't plan your day digitally. Write your day down, and let me explain why. Psychology has proved that when we write stuff down, we're far more likely to execute against it. And what happens is when you write something down the night before you need it, right? What happens is it permeates your subconscious, and your subconscious starts making commitments to it. And then the next day, and even when you're sleeping, your subconscious is mulling it over. So only ever write down the stuff that's going to make your boat go faster, right? So that's outputs and inputs. Your outputs are demos, or your outputs are meetings, or your outputs are jobs, or your outputs are whatever they are. Match your outputs with your inputs, and your inputs are your controllables, and control your controllables. Control your controllables the night before. And lastly, make sure you prepare your data set the night before. Your data set has to be ready, because fast start is vital. 10 before 10 is vital, right? Your opportunity to have 10 conversations before 10 a.m. in the morning is vital. They can be friendlies. They can be people you're in process with, people you're in business with, people you're already talking to. Get yourself going, right? Get your colloquialisms right, get your vernacular right, get your pace right, get your physiology right early on. But you're planning the night before in terms of data set. You plan the night before in terms of inputs and outputs and writing it down. Might sound basic. Listen, by the way, I might show you lots of things you know. But I'll also show you lots of things you ain't fucking doing. Because if you were doing them all, you wouldn't be on this webinar. You'd be sitting in Monaco naked on the back of a yacht or something. Do you know what I mean? So.
Why would they be naked? Like, why would they opt for like some swimming?
When I'm a multi-millionaire, I'm not going to bother with clothes.
Oh, dear. Well, let's hope you're not.
I'm only 6 months away, Sam, to be fair. Because, by the way, when you are, you don't have to. Just don't bother with it. Do you know what I mean?
Fair enough. No, fair enough. Thank you for that. Just a quick reminder as well, there is going to be that free prize off Trev for questions. So please, we might not.
I've just seen Abby Head on the call as well, one of my favourite salespeople. Ab, respect. Sorry, I apologise. So she's not she's a great salesperson. Respect.
You're a wedding DJ, Trev. You're a subject matter expert. You can't do shout outs during it. Anyway, so please put your questions in, guys, and we'll come to them at the end.
Any questions you want around sales? Anything you like? Anything you like?
We've got a couple. We'll come back to them at the end. So so we focused a lot about process. Let's look a little bit in terms of skills then. So lyrics are really important. We talk about these all the time within recruitment. What are lyrics? How important are they? What should people actually be doing on the course? How should they be engaging people? How should they be asking those questions?
Well, first things first, Sam, let's talk about communication skills. Let's talk about PPVI, right? Pace, pause, and voice inflection, right? So first things first, you can't go onto any call sounding like a kid who's first out senior school. Hello, Mrs. Person. You can't be doing that. Even pace, decent tonality, nice and sharp. The less you say, the better. So let's just talk about that first of all, right? But in terms of skills, you must picture yourself as sales back girl or sales back man, right? So what we must do is we must have our own internal playbooks, must have our own sales Bibles that if we haven't got, we've got to create. And those sales Bibles feature our call openers. Those sales Bibles feature our insight questions, our preambles, our context setup open questions. Those sales Bibles features our company pitch, our software pitch, our person pitch. And those sales Bibles feature our objection handles. And then what we do, once we understand that, so it starts with methodologies and it finishes with lyrics. And then we talk about lyrics. We talk about the opportunity to ensure that we don't use filler words, sort of, potentially, maybe. We use definitive language.
A word that just grates me. When someone says essentially every other sentence, it just shouts. You don't know what it's about.
Honestly. But once again, Sam, I'm going to go back to my golf analogy, in and around practice, right? Because it doesn't. You don't become a great salesperson overnight. If I had my time again, Sam, I'd do a sales university degree and I'd make people pass through it. Yeah. You know, sales university. By the way, imagine the frat parties and a night out on that. But anyway, no, we're not there. But I'd have a sales university because I believe it's a skill as much as being a bricklayer or an architect. I believe it's a skill. So first of all, we develop our methodologies. Secondly, we develop our intros, we develop our questions, we develop our pitches and our objection handles and our closes. And then we insert our lyrics. And our lyrics have got to be sex and sizzle. Our lyrics have got to be full of positive phraseology. And we must be able to articulate carefully against that positive phraseology. Right. So I can't, in terms of specific lyrics, the more you use the word I, the more the conversation's about you. Right, so stay away from the word I. Right, let's make sure that we're accentuating positive words, and let's make sure that any insight we give our client in terms of a questioning technique always leads back to a service that we have within our organisation. So there's lots of work for people to do internally. Right, there are very few salespeople that turn up and can just do it.
Can I throw out a few specifics, and you can maybe give a bit of feedback or run with it? So I think there are a couple of things. There's something that you mentioned earlier that I think is really important to get into the call. So within that first 20 or 30 seconds, the way that I look at it, that the first 20 seconds is golden, because without a great first 20 seconds, you don't get the next minute, or you don't get the next minute and a half.
Yeah.
So one of the things is leading with challenges. So look, I've been talking to CISOs like you, to FDs like yourself, and they find with regards to X that one of these three things is their biggest challenge. How would you agree with it? And that leads into a conversation.
Yeah.
The second thing, go on.
So your first 30 seconds, Sam, I'm going to plot your first 30 seconds for you.
Yeah.
Right. The first 2 or 3 seconds, you should say nothing. Right. So your prospect says hello. The worst thing you can do is fly in some half-assed intro.
Yeah.
The first thing you do when your prospect picks up is you pause. You're setting the tone. You're setting the pace. You're setting the assertiveness. So prospect says hello, you pause. The next thing you do is purely say their name positively. So you pause and you say, Sam. So I'm attracting your attention immediately. Then I'm going to tell you who I am, not what I am. It's Trevor over at Ludlow. Right, that's all I'm going to do, right? So, and that's first of all, because what people do go, hi, I'm Trevor over at Ludlow. I'm the head of. Who gives a fuck, right? When your prospect doesn't know you, they don't give a fuck who you are. The first 30 seconds, they're picking up the phone saying, why should I stay in the next 30 seconds?
Yeah.
Right? So what happens is the first 5 or 10 seconds is a pause. You say their name. And then you effectively say who you are, not what you are. Then you must have a capability statement that means something to them. Sam, I've been following you very, very closely on LinkedIn. You're making huge positive noise. As a result, I felt compelled to give you a call and ask you one question. Who ain't going to answer that?
Yeah.
Now, that question better be fucking good, right? So that question better be off some tasty insight in the market and then make them an expert. Give them a big, juicy chunk of insight. Sam, I've spoken to 15 sales directors, probably not as senior as you, probably not as good as you, but in very similar roles. each and every one of those sales directors has suggested to me that their biggest challenge is articulate that biggest challenge and say, what are your thoughts? I'm in. Now I can still fuck it up from there, but I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm in.
I'll throw something across that I've been using. You can maybe critique it, but I really enjoy it as much as anything else, because it's a bit of a pattern interrupt, because I think that one of the things that people get when they take the phone call, Trevor from Ludlow, sometimes you hear people sigh, don't you? Or you feel them sigh, and they kind of realise it's a cold call, it's a sales call, whatever it might be. So one of the things that I've started doing right at the start is saying, and okay, it's recruitment for me, but you can change it for sales. But, hi, Trevor, Sam from So. Now, this is a sales call, but it's a sales call with context. Will you give me 30 seconds to explain why I'm calling? The number of times I get them laughing at that point.
Absolutely right. Listen, if you get a sigh, a little bit of humour never goes amiss.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Sam, this is a sales call, but right, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask for 2.5 minutes of your time. 2 minutes for me to talk to you and half a minute for you to tell me if I'm any good or not. How about that?
Yeah, like that.
Or this is a sales call, you're absolutely right, but guess what? It's going to be the best one you've had today. I'll ask you to give me a mark out of 10 at the end of it. Yeah, Radu's, I just asked a question. Classic Sandler. Be careful of Sandler, Radu. Right? Because those boys never answer a question to anyone ever about anything. So be careful. I like Sandler. It's cool. It's decent. It's smart. But make sure it's Radu as well as Sandler. Okay? I'm
going to throw it across to this. There's something actually that's quite interesting that just come up above that, which is we're going sort of slightly away from what we were talking about. Is there anything you want to add just on skill, just on process, on anything objection handling or anything like that? I love the intro stuff there. I think if we're not doing that, and one of the things that I would say to people is I quite often myself will do a call and I'll come off and I'll go, you know what, I've got stale here. And I need to revisit it, and I need to sit down, and I need to scribble down a couple of ideas and things like that. And I think, a couple of the things that you've used there, Trev, I mean, if people are using that in the right quantities, you can't help but have enough conversation to be successful. Is there anything else you want to touch on skills before we move on? Wow, time has flown.
Another one, they said we might have to do a part 2, mate.
May have to.
I'm up for it if you are. Do you know what I mean? So,
we'll see what feedback is. Absolutely, yeah.
Mate, listen. In terms of skills, that there are 2 parts to skills. Well, there are 3 parts for skills. It's the methodology that you understand. It's your communication skills in terms of the way that you articulate and the way you present yourself. Okay, so they're the 2 most important things. And then the third thing is, mate, is belief.
Yeah.
Right, because I'll teach you every single sales technique in the book. Right, believe, man, because sales is very, very soon. Sales is not a skill set; it's a mindset. So have fun.
Right, I'm going to fly through some questions now. We've got a couple. I'm going to fly through a few here. Firstly, this is an interesting one. How do you combat people who cancel on the very last minute? So maybe you've spoken to somebody, got them at a bad time, you've diarised the time to give them a call, or you've set up a demo, and then 5 minutes before they ping it across. Again, pretty sure I know what you're going to say, but how would you combat that, Trev?
It's really interesting, Sam, right? Because I'm a prospect move-on person, right? Because you must understand your prospect universe, and you must understand the difference between tire kickers and buyers, right? I'm a big 3 chance man. I'm a big 3 chance man, right? And I'm a big man, and I'm always a man for creating urgency after a prospect cancels. But I'm also very, very keen on understanding the honest reason why, because it's so rare that we get real objections. And I said to you earlier, I'd much rather get a positive no than a fake yes.
Yeah.
Right. So for me, it's always about investigation. It's always about opening my kimono and understanding why. But also, listen, I don't hang on to it. Listen, prospects that cancel can be like abusive boyfriends or girlfriends. People hang on from far too long. And I create my own list of prospects who are lucky to be with me.
Yeah.
And lastly, the mindset around prospects that cancel can never be disappointing for you. Use the time that you could have had speaking to that prospect to find some more and ask for some honesty with your prospects in terms of why they did.
Yeah. I think that's an interesting point, and it's something that I think has really empowered me since I've started doing my own thing. I think when you somebody, you kind of think, oh, well, my job is to do business with everyone, and it's not. I mean, you've got a target to hit, and I've got to be honest. Like, I don't do business with dickheads now. Like,
Sam, I refuse, mate. Listen, I've just remapped my market actually, and I've got 1,315 prospects currently in a list. I only need 10, Sam.
Yeah.
Listen, I only need 10 of those guys, and those 10 of those guys are below $500,000, $1 million, whatever. I only need 10. So I'm a big fan of creating someone that's going to respect my service.
Right, I'm going to come on to some of these questions because I am conscious of time. We've got about 10 minutes left. So, question from Matt Keeshan, who, by the way, is one of the best cold callers that I've worked with. And that all comes down to absolute knowledge and confidence in his space. His pitch, pace, tone, and everything that you're talking about, Trev, is absolutely on point. And it all comes down to an absolute knowledge in his space. I'm sure, I mean, that was 5 years ago. I'm sure nothing's changed. He's asked, I've always been told that you should be a chameleon to your audience. Mirror the person on the other end of the phone. Do you agree? I found it to be quite successful.
Right. Okay. So there's two types of being a chameleon. The first type of being a chameleon is communication skills. So if your prospect's quiet, be quiet. If your prospect speaks slowly, speak slowly. You should reverse mirror that if your prospect speaks quickly. Right, because if your prospect speaks quickly and you speak quickly, the phone call's in about 15 seconds, you want to get fuck all out of it. So there's a reverse mirror there. The other mirror is when you take your shoes off and ask your prospect to try theirs on. Right? Because you've got to put yourself in your prospect's shoes if you're going to sell anything to them. So many salespeople want to get across what they want rather than first of all understanding what their prospect wants and being able to pitch against it. So that's the other thing. So wear your prospect shoes. Wear your prospect shoes and find out what life's like for them. Because only then will you potentially be able to sell to them, not once, but more than once.
Thanks, Trev. Moving on. Here's one. With prospects working from home as well as us, how do you go about cold calling? Or is it digital touch points to arrange calls?
Yeah, warm it up with digital touch points. Warm it up with digital touch points. Always warm it up and use some software to get some mobile numbers.
Yeah, and I've got to say, I mean, I said this on the other webinar that we did. The beauty of it at the moment is you have got CEOs working from home. You've got CFO, you've got C-level people.
More time.
Walking the dog. They're people. You can have more personal conversations with them. And I think that's really important.
Couldn't agree more.
Specifically, what are you using as subject lines in emails? How are you?
I've got loads, but I'll give you two. Right. The first one is read ... So it looks like you're already in a conversation. You just replied to an email they've sent you. So they'll open it up. The second one is their first name, the letter X, and then your first name. It opens like a beauty. And I don't know why, but I did loads of research on it, and it opens. And interestingly, my business partner did a big digital email sequence last week, and he did prospect's first name / his first name, and it opens. It opens. The average email opens at 20 to 30% without a decent subject line. But read ... works nicely, and so does that. There's loads of others as well, but the key to it is never more than 6 words.
Thank you. Would you ever use a script? Interesting one from Ian Baker.
I would start a rookie with a script, but then turn it into a framework to allow them to inject their personality. I prefer methodologies and scripts, and then we build lyrics in.
Excellent. I'm just saying. Any tips for finding direct dials now that the office numbers and
Lucia, contact out, Zoom info.
Yeah, Lucia's a good thing. It's a what do you call it? Plug-in for LinkedIn. I think you get 10, 12 credits free, don't you, when you set up?
Yeah, you do.
Not expensive. So if you're doing pretty well, take it to your sales director or whatever. I'm sure they'll find into it. Sorry guys if I've missed your question. I'm just trying to go through. Somebody's asked why you see yourself as a Jack Russell, but they've spelled Jack Russell wrong, not once but twice. So I don't think we answered that question. And I also know that you refer to yourself as a cockroach when asked.
Well, I'm a cockroach. I'd survive a nuclear war as far as a salesman goes. I'm a cockroach, of course I am.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I'm an underdog, Sam. I'm an underdog.
5 free credits. Sorry, thanks, John. Can you give some examples of how you're handling the most common objections due to the pandemic?
Oof, I'll tell you, that's a webinar on its own, Sam.
Fine.
But remember, objection handling now comes in 2 forms: dynamic and positional. There are some objections you can turn into a yes right now. There are some objections you can't, so you position yourself well when you can. That's a webinar on its own, Sam. We can't. Honestly, I've got to be on a train to Leeds in about 45 minutes. There's no way I can cover that now. So
fine, that's fine. You mentioned, this is an interesting one actually, because we do get asked this kind of stuff. You mentioned Lusher and Zoom contacts or Zoom info.
Yeah.
How do you respond when a prospect asks how you got their personal number?
I respond and say I would suggest that I always say, listen, I've got a team of researchers that does this type of thing. You know, we're not breaking any rules, not breaking any laws. All of this information is available in the public domain. But the thing is, I'm a headhunter, so I'll have a line in. But I would say, to be honest with you, I've been looking for your number for quite some time because you're a key person in my environment. You're a key person in my industry. I never apologise ever.
No, I agree.
I explain how I got it. I explain how information is available in the public domain. When I explain that, listen, let's forget that for a moment. Let me add some value to you.
And I'll tell you what I do with that, I get thrown it my way a lot. I'll always say, I use Lusher.
Yeah.
Are you guys using that? Because if I'm talking, I talk to sales directors. So again, I can say to the sales director, look, if you guys aren't using this, it will help you have a lot more conversation.
Absolutely right. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Use a piece of software to identify telephone numbers for us. I'll send you a link at the end of the call. But before we get to there, let's talk about this.
Just seeing if there are any more questions. What percentage are you relative to your quota? And what's your golf handicap? There are 2 that I've seen.
My golf handicap is 24. There's a 15 handicapper in there somewhere, but it's a labour of love, right? What's my percentage of target? I haven't missed target for about 20 years. So let's have that straight. But one of the biggest reasons I set my own.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, look, Trev, we're coming up to an hour there. I'm sure I speak on everyone's behalf. I say a massive thank you. I think if you can't get value from that as a salesperson, you're in the wrong job, to be frank. So, Trev, absolute superstar. We might have to look at setting up a second one.
Yeah, my pleasure, Sam. If anything for you, mate, listen, our whole ethos is if we should. So whatever you need, man, no problem at all.
Good stuff. Right, before we go then, so we've got champers to give away and we've got a coaching session to give away. So
cheers, Jamie. Yeah.
There were 13 people that qualified for the free champagne who liked and commented that post. A lot of people liked, but they didn't comment. So number between 1 and 13, please. And they've got to be on this call to win it. So Number three, Danielle Montgomery, are you on this call? I'm sure I saw her earlier. I'm pretty sure she was the person that couldn't spell Jack Russell from memory. So Danielle Montgomery, bottle of champagne in your way. Add me on LinkedIn, send me your address, and I'll send one across.
Right.
Anything else? I'll do another one, close of play tomorrow. I'm going to be doing a post on LinkedIn, which is going to be advertising the recording of this. So please like and comment that again to go in the draw for a second one. And I'll do it. I'll do it via video tomorrow.
I've got a free coaching call to give away as well, Sam.
Yeah. In terms of
what was the best question, Sam?
I thought I asked a few good ones.
You've already got one in the bank as it is.
I'm trying to go through them now. Which one did you answer that you? I will go through this and I will pick one and I will put it out in a mailer, because otherwise I'm just going to pick the first one that I read, which wouldn't be fair.
No, mate, I'm happy. Whoever you deem to be the best question, then I'll give him a free coaching call.
Want to finish on Richard Long. What do you do? And we'll finish on this. What do you do to overcome those days where everyone tells you to do one? Because we all have those days.
What's the worst thing that can happen? What's the fucking worst thing that can happen? Right? Come on now. What's the what? Someone tells you to do one. All right. So what? Right. Listen, I started out right as a welder on 40 quid a week, right? And I'd get on a building site at 5 to 8 in the morning. It stunk, and I'd pick up steel. It was so cold it stuck to my hands. I'd get burned all day and go home filthy. People tell me to do one all day. You're right. right? Listen, put the day to bed, have a gin and tonic, and wake up next day. It's a new opportunity. And by the way, someone tells you to do one, fuck them. Right? It's them, not you. Listen, don't worry about a thing, man. Look after yourself. Kiss your kids. Cuddle your missus. Go and have half a lager. Throw darts. Do you know what I mean? Don't worry about it, man. Don't worry about it. It's just a no. And every single no takes you to a yes. It's just a no.
Trev, you're an absolute star. From me personally, mate, thank you so much for doing this. Some great questions. Thanks for everybody that's attended. If you've got any topics that you want us to cover or do something like this on, just drop me a note on LinkedIn or send me an email.
Sam, I'll set on record. You're set on record, right? I'll do another one if you want me to. No problem. Let's say it on recording. No problem at all.
You're a star. Guys that are in the market, software sales, if you ever are looking, to move or anything like that, give me a shout. Happy to have a chat with you. I personally believe in a long-term relationship and trying to get you into the right thing, not just the next thing. So a little bit of a plug from me. But Trev, look, massive thank you. Thanks to everybody that's attended. And look forward to speaking to some of you soon. Thanks, guys. All the best. Have a great Christmas.
See you later all. Ta-da. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.